Thank you for joining the National Foundation for Ectodermal Dysplasias conference call. Tonight we are chatting with Mary Kaye Richter, NFED founder and executive director. I will let Mary Kaye share a little bit about her journey with you through our conference call tonight. I'll let you know that in 2011 we will be celebrating our 30th anniversary. So Mary Kaye founded the NFED in 1981 after a dentist diagnosed her young son as being affected by hypohidrotic ectodermal dysplasia. And so here we are 29 years later, an organization that is serving more than 5,000 individuals affected by all types of ectodermal dysplasias throughout the world. And so, Mary Kaye, I'm now going to turn the call over to you.
Well, that's very nice, Kelly. Thank you so much. Needless to say, I always enjoy talking with folks, so having all of you on the line is a great thing. And, you know, I could guess at what you might want, but it would be much easier if someone has a particular question or thought they'd like to throw out there for me to respond to. I'd be happy to do so. If you don't have an idea of something, you know, Kelly and I have talked about some things, but wanting to make certain that your questions are answered, I'd like to start there.
So
anyone?
You'll want to press *7 to unmute your line so you can ask Mary Kaye a question. How about I get us started? I have one.
Okay.
Because I hear this a lot. And so I'm answering this question a lot, and hopefully by your response I'll know if I'm answering it properly. Sometimes I think you ought to listen into my calls, Mary Kaye.
Well, that could probably be very interesting.
So what suggestions would you have for new parents who are trying to get their children to wear dentures for the first time?
Well, you know, there's differing schools of thought on that, and I guess now that I have a Medicare card, I officially can be called an old fogey, and as such, my perspective may be a little bit different from folks who are a little bit younger. So at any rate, I do think, though, there are two ways to go about it. One is to understand that wearing dentures can only be successfully done if one wears them. You will never learn to wear dentures if they're not in your mouth. So folks can do typically one of two things. One is, for some parents, what I would call a sort of bribe and reward system, wherein maybe some favorite activities or a favorite treat becomes a reward after wearing dentures for a given period of time that's determined ahead of time. So, for example, it might be an hour in the morning and an hour in the afternoon as a beginning. When we went through the process, the dentist and I really talked about it and felt that basically reinforcing the notion that the dentures have to be worn was likely to be the quickest and most successful approach. And so what we did when Charlie got his dentures, and he was 2.5 at the time, I basically took a couple-week period of time to devote entirely to him, and we did all kinds of things together, but the one thing that was certain was that if he took his dentures out, I made sure that they were put back into his mouth. And it really is somewhat of a battle of wills, but if you think about it, and at the time I was about 35, you know, a 35-year-old should have some ability to control the actions of a 2.5-year-old. So we just kept at it. It wasn't necessarily a pleasant thing, but the reality was after about 2 weeks of that, or perhaps it wasn't even that long, it was almost as if he decided, you know, she's not going to give up, and if life is ever going to be any better, I better just wear these things. So he indeed did, and we never had the issue again, even when the dentures were changed, and for him it was fairly frequent. Our dentist was always erring on, I guess, the side of changing the dentures rather than waiting for a period of time to go by. So at that point in time, he was getting new dentures about every 18 months. But that first adjustment period was really the only one we ever had. And the thing that, in fact, I asked Mary Kaye to go back and look at our dental survey information, and there's really no way to pull out of there specifically at what age or ages is the child most likely to succeed. But what I do know is that if there is not success, regardless of what age it is, if it's 2.5 or 4.5 or 6.5 or 8, it's almost as if you get that one shot at making it happen, and after that, it's unlikely that it will ever happen until the young person is much older. And the unfortunate thing about that is, of course, that leaves the child open to teasing and or ridiculing and or bullying. And in this day and age, that certainly is not something we want, to see happen to the kiddos. So I'm very much a proponent of getting the teeth early, of doing everything possible to help the child learn how to wear them, or in fact to make them wear them so they do learn how to wear them, and to be supportive. I know one of the things that's often said is, well, the dentist says the child doesn't have enough ridge. As you all likely know, the ridge of the mouth only develops when there are teeth in it. In Charlie's case, he didn't have any teeth in his lower jaw, so there was virtually no ridge there for dentures to fit on. And after he started wearing them, I asked him, the dentist, one day, how is he wearing them? And he said he has learned how to spread the back of his tongue to hold those dentures down. That is something, again, you can only learn by doing. And, of course, as time went by, Charlie had implants placed in his lower gum. He decided he didn't want them in his upper jaw and continues now at the age of 32, not really caring if any more implant work is done or not. But it just seems like there is that single opportunity in which this thing can work. And, you just really hope that parents and dentist and patient can all work together to make it happen.
Were you fortunate enough to have one dentist, or did you have to seek a second opinion for Charlie when he was young?
Well, now at that point in time, nobody knew anything about ED. There wasn't anybody else to talk to who knew anything about it. And basically we were fortunate enough to have our family dentist who simply was interested in providing the care. He wanted to do it, and quite frankly, I couldn't imagine anybody else doing it for him. So we had one dentist up until the time that we decided to enroll Charlie in what was then the Implant project at the National Institutes of Health. And at that point then, there was an oral surgeon and a prosthodontist, but our local dentist provided care outside of the project when it was needed, because to be in the project you had to go to Maryland, which is not next door to Illinois, and to limit the number of trips we needed to make out there, we simply had some of the care done locally. Now that he's an adult, he simply has a prosthodontist that follows him, and about every 10 years or so as an adult, those dentures need to be replaced because they do wear down. I think the other thing to mention about implants, because for many people it's the notion that this is the preferred method of treatment, and that's not necessarily the case. I think sometimes families are sold implants when they maybe really don't need them. And the second thing is that there may be sold more implants. You and I know of a case where a dentist put in 32 implants, and that was just absolutely ridiculous. Even the most outstanding researchers and dentists I know, deans of dental schools, just, find that to be appalling. So you really have to know something about that whole implant thing. But the point I wanted to make was it is not only the initial expense of providing the implants and the prosthetics, but you have to understand that the prosthetics will need to be replaced about every 10 years, and it's very expensive to do. The last time Charlie had his done in his early 20s, which makes me realize that he's probably about due for some again, they were about $12,000, and that was at a dental school. So making the decision to go to implants is one that really takes a lot of investigation, and I would encourage folks to see several individuals before they decide who's going to do it and whether they're going to do it. It was easy for us. Charlie was part of a research project. When you're part of a research project, you don't have to pay for the expense of the care. So he really benefited from that, and that then makes the cost of replacement prosthetics on average more reasonable. Was that as clear as mud?
I think it was, and now I know you've trained me well, because all that I would have said.
I know you would have.
Does anyone have a question for Mary Kaye? Because trust me, she'll tell you that I can fire questions at her all day long.
If you have a child, I have a young child. He is 16 months old, and he has hypohidrotic ectodermal dysplasia.
Okay.
And he has had some feeding issues, like he has had severe acid reflux, and that's much better now, but I still think he has some. And I just, go back and forth with our GI doctor about, what should my expectations for feeding be with him, especially since he doesn't have any teeth or dentures or anything.
Right, yeah. My Charlie didn't either until he was 5. Let me ask you this. Where is he on the growth curve?
He is pretty good. I mean, he's like probably about 25 percentile.
For weight or height?
About both.
About both, okay. Well, that actually, from what I hear from a lot of families, that's probably on the higher end. I think, back to Charlie, I think he was about the 10th percentile, and of course now he's, 6 foot tall, and that's certainly above average, and he's not fat, but he's well built, so he's a pretty good sized guy. And that's a phenomena that we see quite frequently. The reflux is not unusual. We don't know why that happens. But if you think a little bit about the ectodermal dysplasias and what the condition can do, in the fact that there's dryness, in so many places, if in fact you think the mucous membranes in the gut are maybe not what they ought to be, or in the esophagus or what have you, or if any other place in the body. We used to have problems with with Charlie and constipation when he was real little. And, of course, now as an adult he has some issues with irritable bowel. But it's not anything I'd really worry about too much. Of course, it's important that you talk with your doc and you watch him, but it's typically something that we see kids outgrow, and even with quote-unquote normal babies, whatever those are, because I haven't met one yet, those kids, if they have some reflux problems, tend to outgrow them by the time they're, 2 years old, something like that. Of course, if it's serious, then there might be some consideration given to putting in a G-tube, but you only do that when there's a lot of failure to thrive present and have great concern about the child getting the nutrients they need. Is he generally eating pretty well?
I think so now. I mean, there was definitely, I have 2 older children, and, my daughter, when I remember, before she had teeth, when she was 9 months old, I would feed her, cooked rice or, something like that, and she could swallow it. But Lincoln, there's no way he could eat that.
Yeah.
And so,
do you make it real thin for him?
Well,
and I only say
eat it now, but he couldn't eat it back then. Probably not until recently was he able to eat those things. And
but you have to I'm sorry.
Oh, no, it's okay.
You have to remember that there could be some problems with insufficient saliva, which could explain some of that, and it's one of the reasons we often talk about making sure that lots of liquids are brought to the table along with the meal itself to help with the swallowing. And there's something, and in your question and my comment reminds me that one of the great frustrations, and over the 30 years, fortunately there haven't been a whole lot, but even now I watch my son at times have difficulty swallowing. He doesn't, if meats are dry or if something just is drier than he would like, he seems to have more difficulty swallowing it. And some years ago, and by now I guess I'm probably talking 20 years ago, when the group of patients was at the National Institutes of Health, there was a physician there that did all kinds of testing. And the sorry thing about it was, and actually it was flat out awful, but the doctor left the NIH and took all the information along so that no one else could look at the test results. And the only thing I ever heard was, there was something different about the swallowing, but never what that was. And we tried for years to get that information back and, went to the director of the NIH and all kinds of people. And, basically it wasn't going to be given up, and I suspect was probably even lost along the way. But, I do think there's something there, and maybe in time we'll learn more about what it is. But for now, I'd really push liquids as much as you could when the child's eating.
Yeah, no, that's actually very helpful because our GI doctor was saying that maybe he needs these tests and it could be some rare allergy thing. And to me, I'm thinking I don't think so. I just think he's having some trouble, but he's doing all right. So thank you. That really actually helps a lot.
Well, and now's when I give the disclaimer I should have given early on, and that is, I'm not medically trained. The only thing I can tell you is that I probably talked to more individuals and family affected by ectodermal dysplasia than anyone else on the face of the globe. And I like to think that I have at least average intelligence, and I can draw some reasonable conclusions from what I've seen over the years. And, I just really do think that lack of moisture in the body has a lot to do with the ability to swallow. And there could be something else there, maybe a little more narrowing of, the throat or something like that, but it's not anything that we could really put our finger on right now, because the one good chance we had of getting that information was lost.
Thank you.
But I'm glad that's helpful.
It is helpful. I really think it is.
Good. Keep me posted.
Other questions or statements?
Yeah, I have a question. I have two sons with hypohidrotic ectodermal dysplasia. One is 23 months, and one is just 6 weeks old.
Oh, boy.
And so I'm wondering about dentures, because I've been to two different dentists, and both of them are telling me it's way too early to consider dentures for my oldest child, who's almost 2.
And he is 26 months.
23 months, so he's almost
23
2.
months, almost 2. Okay.
Yeah. So I got a second opinion. I live in Las Vegas, so I actually went to UNLV dental school.
Yeah.
The same thing. I mean, there were probably 6 or 7 residents in pediatric dentistry who were there, and even though none of them were familiar with HED, they all said it's too early. I wouldn't tell you.
And did you ask them why do you say that?
Well,
that would be my first question to ask back. Why do you say that? And that gives you some room to sort of maneuver in, because there are a couple of reasons why dentists don't want to put dentures in young kids. One is, in fact, they think it can't be done. And the reality is there's plenty of evidence out there, and it's not that we recommend it in an 18-month-old, but I know of an 18-month-old that got dentures and learned how to wear them. Okay. So we know that that's not true, okay?
There's certainly growth restriction. That's what.
Pardon?
Growth restriction.
No, because the jaws don't grow. If you take the curvature of the jaw, interestingly enough, from what I'm told, is that front part really doesn't change very much. It's the back that changes. Okay? And the only way you would restrict growth is if there was some fixed appliance in there that didn't allow for the jaws to grow. And that would mean, oh gosh, what a fixed appliance. That would be as if you had maybe 7 or 8 teeth in the jaw, and you put a denture in that was attached to all of those teeth so that basically nothing could move. And that's not what you have when you put in an overdenture, or something like that. The reality is that a lot of dentists say, it can't work or it won't work, is because they don't think they can do the work. They'd rather just not try. And
are you still there, Mary Kaye? I think you may have lost it.
Good. Okay, we'll
see if Mary Kaye can dial back in. The person that has the question, could you mute your line?
Oh, could I mute it?
Yes.
Yes.
I'm sorry for our difficulties tonight. This is the first time we've had difficulties on one of our calls. Hoping that Mary Kaye can dial back in.
So, Kelly, maybe I can ask you while we're waiting, if it's okay. I just asked the question.
Okay.
What, in your experience of people you've talked to, what seems to be the age that kids are getting dentures, or is it a wide range?
Really around the age 2 and 3, parents find success at that age. It's sort of like potty training. They're still young enough. They're not, well, some 2 and 3-year-olds talk back, but you know, you have that. You can still have that incentive, that reward system with them. So that is a good age. But we also hear from parents who their children, before they go into preschool or kindergarten, that they're getting their first sets of dentures also.
Okay. Thank you.
And it does vary. There are teenagers out there and adults that maybe didn't get their first set until later on in life. It does vary, but the parents that we hear from now, it's usually that younger age. Just try to ward off any teasing that the child may encounter as they enter school.
Right.
We always hope that's not the case, but sometimes, unfortunately, it does happen.
Okay. Thank you.
We are it is just a little after 7:30, so we are halfway through our call. Going to.
Hey, Kelly?
Yes.
Hey, I got a quick question. You can answer this one. Maybe I'm missing it, or maybe no one's thought of it. Me and my wife have talked a lot that, you know, these phone calls are great and all that, and I don't really know anybody else that personally their child is affected by ED. And we're constantly going, well, I wonder if there's a forum somewhere, and if there is one I'm missing somewhere on NFED's website that, you know, that all the parents and things can chit-chat and kind of go over things.
We do not have a forum at this time that has been built for that. We have a page on Facebook where lots of parents are communicating through that means, posting comments and thoughts, and people are replying that way. Also, there are liaisons throughout the country, and so you can connect with that liaison. Or we can provide you a list of families in your area so that you can reach out to them. Now, in order to receive that list, you would have had to tell us that you give permission to add your contact information to that list, so that everyone on the list would have given us that permission as well. So we have no forums built within like what used to be called bulletin boards or message boards. We're not doing that. We've chosen the other options, the Facebook and the list, or what we used to call our participants directory, and the family-to-family network, which is the liaison program.
Okay.
Where did I lose you all?
Thank you.
It took me a while to realize that somehow my call had failed.
Okay. There was just a question on the table about forums and communication.
Okay.
And how families could reach out to one another. So I explained that we don't have bulletin boards or message boards per se,
right,
but we have Facebook and our liaison program. If there are those of you that are on the call, if you have an interest in a forum kind of format, if you'd send that information or your thoughts and comments to our office, we can tally that, and as we look to build programs, we will certainly add that to our discussion table.
Absolutely.
Back to the question that you were addressing, Mary Kaye.
Right. How far into my litany did I get?
You were pretty well. You had summed up. I'm trying to think.
Okay. Well, just for one last thing, the first thing is that, can the work be done in a young child? Absolutely. It should, in any case, be done by the time they enter school. If the pediatric dentist isn't interested in doing it, you might talk to a prosthodontist or even a general dentist who simply has a desire to help the child. There are people like that around. And then lastly, if you find somebody that says, okay, I'll do it, but it sure would be good to have somebody to talk to, they can call me, excuse me, or you at the office, and we'll give them the names of, people like Tim Wright or Frank Farrington and Art Nowak or Paul Caspassimo. I mean, there's a whole group of people around the country that we can lead them to that will help them work through the process from where do you get the small impression trays to where do you get the small, little teeth. So that should do it, I think.
Great, thank you. Are there other questions?
I have a question.
Yes.
I have one of the various forms of ED. I have trichorhinophalangeal syndrome type 1.
Right.
I do know that that there are some hip problems that is common with TRPS. And I'm not sure about this, but is lower back problems, is that common with TRPS? Because I've gotten to the point where I have lower back pain, and I have hip pain, and it's gotten to the point where I'm forced to use a handicap scooter for mobility assistance now.
Right.
So I'm just wondering, like I said, I know that some hip problems are common with TRPS, but is that problems, is that also common with TRPS?
Well, one, you caught me at home without any of my reference books, which is, makes answering a question like that challenging. But let's simply say this. When it comes to the rare syndromes, and of course, all of the ectodermal dysplasias in and of themselves are rare. But if you I don't know, Kelly, what the HED percentage, isn't it around 80%, something like that, out of all of the families?
Yes, I believe so.
Okay. So then if you take, that's 80%, and that's one of about 150 EDs, and so then you've got to, for discussion's sake, we'll say there's 149 other types divided among the rest of the people. That makes those syndromes especially rare and makes them even a bit more challenging to understand, simply because they occur so infrequently that getting good information is even more challenging than with the HEDs.
Oh.
So then, Pam, if you take a question like either joint pain or bone pain, or however you want to say that, and like to have an answer as to whether or not that's part and parcel of the condition, the reality is that without some good research to say in one way or another whether or not that's the case, it's pretty hard to say. I'm sitting here and, I'll tell you that I've got a lot of back pain and I've got hip pain, but I certainly don't have TRP. So that's just a really hard question to answer.
Okay.
Now, one of the other things that I often say with the other syndromes is that if you have a condition like TRP, and then something else is going on with your body, it's possible that the presence of TRP doesn't cause that secondary problem, but could make the secondary problem more challenging.
Oh.
It's kind of like asthma in HED patients. You know, do we think that HED and asthma run together? Well, not really, because there's lots of folks with HED that don't have asthma. But if you're born into a family where there is a bit of a tendency to have asthma anyway, the presence of the HED will typically make that asthma more challenging.
Oh.
Okay? I know that that's somewhat of a complicated explanation, but it may in fact account for why you're bothered perhaps more than the average individual who might have some back pain or hip pain or what have you.
Oh, okay.
And then I'll also remind you, Pamela, my dear, you're not getting any younger.
I know. I know.
which is partly my problem, too.
Well, that was a good question. Thank you. Mary Kaye, I just thought of something. So I'm wondering, did you and Norman have the same expectations for Charlie that you had for your other two children?
Well, you know, I always tell the other two they were lucky that they were born first, because if I had known just how much I could get out of one of my kids, as I did with Chuck, the other two would have learned how to pick up their toys and, you know, put their clothes away and all that kind of stuff. Because they really learned how much authority a parent really could have when Charlie came along with the whole denture wearing thing. But yeah, I don't think a physical condition is any reason not to have high expectations. And you know, he still had to, you know, take out the trash. He still had to, when he was old enough, help mow the grass. And of course, now he's actively involved in the farm. And it's not that we don't cut him slack, because there are times when we simply have to cut him some slack. But it's not an excuse. ED has never been an excuse for not being able to do something. So it's just maybe a message that you have to do it a little bit differently. So, you know, we shall see, you know, as time goes along with all of the kids. But, you know, one of the things, Kelly, you asked me one day, you know, is you know, as I reflect back on the 29 years, you know, one of the things that makes me happiest is now having watched any number of youngsters grow up and are now adults. And I look at those that were at the Halloween Bash in New York City with us last week, and, you know, these are individuals who have grown up to be confident, very comfortable with themselves, eager to participate in everything that life has to offer. And if, in fact, by encouraging folks to have those high expectations for their children, I think is the reason why those particular kids are doing so well. You know, no excuses, high expectations, and lots of support and confidence that the child can be anything they want to be. I'm actually waiting for one of them to grow up and, you know, be president or something like that.
Does anyone else have any thoughts for Mary Kaye? Maybe something that's not medically related, but something that has to do with the foundation, or perhaps her retirement, which she announced in our latest issue of The Educator.
Well, I do have a question, another one.
All right.
Mary Kaye, once you retire from NFED, will you still be somewhat involved with NFED?
Well, Pam, I got a question for you.
Okay.
What do you think?
I hope you are still involved.
Yeah. I really can't imagine not being involved.
Okay.
I mean, it would be kind of like having a child and saying, okay, you're 29 now, I'm done with you, you know. I mean, it really doesn't work that way in raising kids or, in fact, developing an organization. I'm just looking forward to having some days where I can get up and decide what I really want to do that day rather than what somebody else wants me to do that day.
Okay, because what I'm thinking was that if you know once you do retire, you know, I was scared that you up and completely disappear, and like I said, you know, once you're retired, you know, I would like to see you to be, you know, still involved with NFED.
Yeah. Well, you're not going to be that lucky. I'm not going to disappear.
Good. I am glad to hear that you will still be involved with NFED, and Mary Kaye, you just made my day.
Well, good. I'm glad to hear that. Thanks, Pam.
You're welcome.
That's a great question, Pam. Thanks for asking. How about anybody else? Any other questions hanging out there in your households?
I have a quick question.
Okay.
I was just wondering, we're just starting the whole process of getting into this. My daughter is 21 months now, and our dentist was the one that has us going and getting tested. And I was wondering if you would stick with the same dentist to do the dentures, it's a pediatric dentist, or would you seek out a dentist that has dealt with children with ED?
Well, it's wonderful if you can find somebody that has. Where are you located?
I'm in New Jersey.
You're in New Jersey. Boy, there used to be a fellow there, but I know he's retired, that did a number of ED kids. I'll tell you what you do. Of course, you're very close to Pennsylvania, too, and the city, right? I mean, how far are you from New York City?
I'm about 40 minutes from this city. And
okay.
Yeah, and same with Pennsylvania, too.
With Philadelphia?
Yeah.
And I guess Washington, D.C. then, too, or that's maybe a little further.
D.C.'s definitely further. We're more central Jersey.
Yeah. Why don't you send Kelly an email tomorrow or you know, at your convenience, and we'll send you some names of some people that have some experience. I think, you know, it's great if there's somebody at hand that you can use that, in fact, has provided some care, but that's not always possible. Let's see if there isn't somebody we can send you to, either in New York City or in Philadelphia, because there's wonderful places at both. So we can give you some names and we can go from there.
You would recommend to do that?
Well, I just think if somebody has some experience with it, they will have a little more confidence going into the process than someone who has never done it before. However, that being said, if you'll remember what I said earlier, one of the things that we've learned over time is that the desire of the dentist to provide the care almost upstages any other qualification they have. Because if they really want to provide the care, it seems like they work really hard to get it done and get it done right.
Yes, see,
if you've got a good family dentist that you like and he's willing to provide the care, I wouldn't, think twice about it. That's exactly what we did.
Yeah, no, this was just a random pediatric dentist that I went to. I mean, I looked them up and their credentials were great. And, they're really interested in helping. Like, they never
I think that's great.
Yeah, they never once said to me that, that they're really not equipped to do it. They tried to reassure me that they are equipped that they have, the lasers in there for the sores. If she gets a sore, that they can, take care of that right away for her. So I feel that they have been that way. So I don't know if I want to turn my back on them and
I don't think you should.
Else.
I don't think you should. If you get somebody who wants to do the care, that's where I'd start.
Okay.
Now, are they at all concerned about her age? What are they telling you about her age?
Bit. They said around 2.5 is what they said to me for the first set of dentures.
Yeah, well, good. That is typically a bit younger than we often hear. So, as long as she's got them by the time she's 30, you all have to understand you've got these little people, and especially if they don't have many teeth, which was the case with our son, their speech often isn't developing well. Maybe as parents we know exactly what the child's talking about, but other people can't understand. So there's going to be not only the learning how to wear the dentures, but how to speak with the dentures. See if we get that started early enough that all of those issues are out of the way before, you begin to think about school. The other little tidbit to consider when starting the care is that if the child has a lot of difficulty with lack of perspiration, you might choose to do the work at a time when typically temperatures are cooler, like in the fall or in the winter, early spring, that kind of thing, rather than over the summer. And the other thing that you may want to consider is getting toilet training out of the way as well, because there's no point in trying to put the child in a position where they're learning how to do too many things at once. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Good. But it sounds like you've got a great place to go to.
Yeah, I was excited about that, but certain family members are, saying to me, maybe you should try to find a dentist that has worked with this before.
Yeah. How close are you to the New Jersey what is it? UJ, the University of New Jersey's Medical and Dental School. I know that's not the right name for it, but
I know what you're talking about. I don't know exactly where that is in New Jersey.
Yeah, that's another place where I know they've provided some care for ED patients. But again, if you've got somebody who really wants to provide the care, that's as important as anything.
Well, thank you.
Oh, you're more than welcome.
We have time for one last question tonight. Is there a question out there?
I've got one real quick. No one else speaking up. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Reagan's finally in at University of Michigan, and she goes to the dentist there and to the dermatology clinic. And, I could already hear earlier the woman saying that UNLV, everybody's coming into the office. All the students come in to see Reagan because she's unique. She's apparently the only ED patient at the University of Michigan. I'm floored by that. And
that's kind of, well, whatever,
The dermatology clinic wants to bring her in early next year for a conference, not just as, present her case. They want to bring her in.
Yeah.
And I know there's positives to this. And on the parent side, she loves to be around people and thinks this is great because she's still 4. But I'm worried at what point, in the dentist clinic and everywhere that just this is too much attention for what.
Yeah, how old is she?
She's going to be 5 right after Christmas.
How do you think she feels about that?
She loves the attention. It's just that, this seems like this is going to be a continuing thing there that, they get a new group of students, especially in the dental school, that, hey, let's bring everyone in to look at her.
Right. Does that make you feel uncomfortable?
I'm kind of borderline on it. That I'm on the hinge that I want them to, I think the more people that are exposed to this, the better, because it could be one of them that comes up with the answer to some new technique, whatever.
Sure, right.
But at the same
and that's a very important point.
I mean, I get worried that it's not exploiting her. It's just that I'm not sure that one day that's going to be the one that's going to drive her over the edge and go, this just feels weird.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that I've often talked about is the importance of open communication. And I think that I would explain to her what it is they're wanting to do, and then to let her understand that anytime she doesn't want to do this, it's okay to say, I don't want to do this anymore. As you might suspect, my poor son was exposed to an awful lot, even still today, as he does things like serve as a master ceremony at the event that we had in New York City a couple of weeks ago or last week. And I think what it is an obviously a wonderful education tool. I would like to think that they would have more than your daughter there, but perhaps they don't. And then decide among your family how you want to go about this. I think oftentimes we think little people don't understand nearly as much as they really do. And, just to simply lay it out for them. And I know 5 is little, and, I've got some grandchildren in that age range, but it's amazing what they do understand. And I would say, now, this is what they're wanting to do. This is why they're wanting to do it. What do you think? And I think I go through the litany each time. And then that gives her a chance to say, I really don't want to do this. Interestingly, as now that my son is much older and I talk about some of the things, even, for example, making him wear his teeth when he was a little boy, he doesn't remember any of it. And even a 5-year-old isn't going to remember a whole lot of what's taken place. So you might have a little window of time here where, she's going to be pretty oblivious to any discomfort other than the fact that a whole lot of people are paying attention to her. And that's not a bad thing. But I do think I just be open and honest with her and tell her that this is what's going on, and talk about it each time. Don't make an assumption that because we did it, in April, that she's wanting to do it again in October.
Yeah, it's just nice to hear different. We talk about it, and it's hard to make up a decision, and it's just good to hear.
Well,
she's not the only one that goes through this.
Right. The reality is these young folks are not going to learn about the condition unless they have the opportunity to see it. And one of the things that I've often said is that there are a lot more of these patients affected by ED around. It's just that a lot of dentists aren't recognizing them for who they are. And having the chance to see a patient, particularly a little girl, because she's a little bit different than the little boys whom they typically expect to see. So it's something for you to talk about together and to weigh the positives and the negatives and then decide what's best for you all.
Thank you.
But it sounds like she's a delightful little gal that's probably ready for almost anything.
So we keep telling her.
Well, thank you all very much for participating tonight. It is a minute after 8 o'clock, so we must end our call here. But I do want to thank you. Mary Kaye, do you have any closing remarks?
I really don't, other than this was a lot of fun, and I hope it's something that, with the various topical calls, that everybody will participate in, and we can have a good time with it.
Thank you very much. Well, as I stated earlier, our call is being recorded, so if you'd like to listen to it at a later date, the recording will be made available by the end of next week. And if you have any questions or any thoughts, please don't hesitate to send us an email at the NFED, and that's just info@nfed.org, and you can access that from our website as well. So thank you all, and I hope you have a wonderful evening.
Good night.
Good night.
Yeah, thanks, Kelly.
Thank you.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Thank you. Please stand by.